I saw like a super cut of like different, and it could have been deceptively edited. The segment might not be what it was portrayed to be on Twitter. So that's the reason why I went and found the whole 16-minute clip. So we could watch it together and we could decide, did Tucker break his brain? Could it be the Jokerification of Tucker Carlson? The title of it is Asking Obvious Questions is Forbidden, which is a weird title. I'm assuming by the length this is his opening monologue to his show. As I said, I watched like a minute supercut of this, and he did indeed appear to be going crazy. So let's see what we think about it. I can't promise you that he's actually crazy. It could just been, copium by the left on Twitter. But let's find out.
Tucker Carlson, tonight, there are a few things more infuriating than being lied to by the government you pay for, the one your ancestors risked their lives to protect. Has that happened to you? Of course it has. It enrages you. But if it happens again and again, if it happens often enough, if your government makes a habit of lying to you, then over time it becomes something else. Over time you realize you're not really living in a democracy. You can't be. Because in a democracy, the government has a moral and legal obligation.
I thought you guys hated democracy. I thought we lived in a constitutional republic.
And that makes sense because in a democracy, you are not a subject or a mere consumer. You're a citizen. You are a shareholder in the system. You are an owner of it. The people who run your government are your employees. They're like your cleaning lady.
Yeah, I like that shit.
Work they do, good job. But the minute you catch them stealing your cufflinks, you fired them. Those are the rules because it's your house, not theirs. But what if the rules were inverted? What if you caught an employee stealing, but instead of seeming ashamed and penitent, he whipped around and attacked you, like you were the criminal? Well, that is the experience of watching White House spokesman John Kirby talk about the destruction of the Nord Stream pipelines. Anyone who imagines, who thinks for a moment the Biden administration was in any way involved with that sabotage, directly or indirectly, is not simply wrong. No, anyone who imagines that.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if the CIA was involved in any way.
Did the U.S.
I'm indifferent on it.
For the U.S. have anything to do with the explosion on the Nord Stream pipeline?
The United States had nothing to do with it. That's just Russian propaganda and disinformation. Now we know it was an active.
That's possible too.
Investigation going on right now.
50-50.
We're going to get into credentialing that in terms of who was responsible. We're going to let the investigators take a look at that, but clearly this was an act of sabotage.
All right, so you can officially say that the U.S. was not involved in any way in this attack.
That's right. That's correct.
Not to belabor this, but for the people who look at this and say, why would Russia attack its own pipeline that creates leverage over Europe and perhaps the West, what do you say to them?
Again, I can't speak to specific accountability for this act of sabotage. I can just assure you the United States had nothing to do with it. Of course, that's just Russian propaganda.
So notice, Brett Barrett.
Now, the counter to that would be that, like, Russia was willing to sacrifice, because Putin is fucking crazy right now and desperate, that Russia would be willing to sacrifice the pipeline in order to drive up the price of oil for the future, and that they could use it as a pretext for escalation and to try to drum up nationalism at home. The CIA being involved in it wouldn't surprise me at all, though.
Ask the question. Did the U.S., did the Biden administration, or any of its proxies have anything to do with the sabotage? To which John Kirby says, we didn't do it, and then moves right to the point, which is anyone who says we did it is repeating Russian propaganda. That's what John Kirby said. It's disinformation from quislings, more loyal to Vladimir Putin than their own country. That's the kind of thing that only truly bad people say. Okay. If the White House says so, obviously we have no choice but to believe it. But you still have to wonder, not everyone does believe that. Why?
Listen, all y'all, and sabotage.
That the Biden administration might have been involved, directly or through a proxy, in the destruction of the Nord Stream pipelines. Why would they think that? They certainly didn't watch it on Russia Today. RT has been pulled off.
And for those of you listening to the podcast audio and wondering why the fuck I did that, sabotage is in big red fucking letters on the screen right now.
Off the air. They didn't hear it from Putin or any of his ministers. You can barely find anything from the Russian government on Google. And of course, any book sympathetic to Putin has been banned on Amazon. In fact, every piece of information that reflects the modern Russian point of view has been censored in the United States because this is a free country.
Is that true?
You just can't read what you want or think what you want. So actually,
I can't imagine that's true.
if Americans are deluded about what happened to the Nord Stream pipeline, the delusion didn't come from Moscow because there's no way for Moscow to get us disinformation to the United States because the U.S. government has blocked it along with the tech companies. So where did that idea come from? Why might they think that? Well, maybe they learned it from Joe Biden himself. He's the president.
And now just look how similar this is to what Blake Masters was saying in the debate. The tech companies colluding with the government. Yeah, like fucking like he's conflating RT not being offered on cable systems, which is just like a capitalist retaliation against Russia, to censorship of information, which I don't believe is going on at all.
Here's Biden this winter on American television pledging to destroy the Nord Stream pipelines if Russia does something he doesn't want them to do. Watch.
If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that exactly? Since the project and control of the project is within Germany.
Oh, was RT canceled by Russia?
We will. I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
So that's about as clear as it gets. Biden doesn't say we will shut it down. He will say there will be no Nord Stream pipeline. We will put an end to it. And then the reporter says, but wait a second. It's not your pipeline. How will you be able to do that? So he has a chance to reframe the question, to revise his answer, to be more precise, but he doesn't. He says flat out, I promise you, we'll be able to take out Nord Stream.
By the way, old school. Good evening.
So there's that clue.
I was trying to lay out during the debate, because like the YouTube crowd, they enjoy it if you lay out during the debate. So, but I also like to say hello to everybody that comes in here. Express my gratitude. Now, apparently, Tucker really loses it here in the last 5 or 6 minutes of this monologue. So we're getting there. We're going further and further down the rabbit hole here.
As if that wasn't enough, last Friday, the Secretary of State in the Biden administration, Mr. Tony Blinken, bragged about how great the sabotage of Nord Stream was. And we're quoting, "It's a tremendous opportunity," said Tony Blinken. "It's a great thing, not a tragedy."
That Chinese state dude that is always owning people on Twitter is still going at it. I love him.
Destroyed a natural gas pipeline. We're for that. So that might be another clue that the Biden administration may have had something to do with it. Oh, but no, says the White House. Despite the fact that we promised we would do it, and then we crowed about how great it was after it happened, we had nothing at all to do with it. Who did it? Well, Russia did it. They blew up their own pipeline, making their own country poorer and weaker in the middle of a major war, because that's how crazy, but also diabolically effective, the Russians are. Suicidal, yet brilliant. And if you don't buy that story uncritically, if you have any questions about how exactly that might work, you're a disloyal American. Shut up. Here's Chris Stewart, a Republican member of Congress from Utah, making the very same point.
John Kirby with the National Security Council was on earlier, in no uncertain terms said the U.S. was not behind, and a proxy of the U.S. was not behind the explosion on the Nord Stream pipeline. From your perspective, both of you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. This is the last thing that we want to raise gas prices further in Europe. It's pretty obvious this is a Russian sabotage operation.
And for the people, Congressman Stewart, that say, why would Russia do that on its own pipeline, what do you say?
Well, then people who are suggesting the U.S., that is exactly what Vladimir Putin wants.
It's just so great. I mean, it's perfectly bipartisan. Here you have a Republican from Utah, Chris Stewart, and a Democrat from Massachusetts, Seth Moulton, agreeing precisely. It's exactly what Vladimir Putin wants. He wants you to blame the Biden administration for something he did. That's the bipartisan view in Washington. What's interesting is they don't really know that. They have no evidence that that's true. Briefers from the intel agencies have, as of this afternoon, told members of Congress they have no idea who committed industrial terrorism against these pipelines. Now, that itself is a lie, of course. The CIA has no idea at all? Right. They have no idea. But as far as members of Congress, Chris Stewart and Seth Moulton know, there is no evidence either way. They have no facts. That is a fact. They have no facts. So again, as a factual matter, neither of those guys nor any member of Congress, no matter what committee they sit on, has any idea who did this. But if you suggest the obvious, Russia probably didn't do it, because why would they do it?
Fuzzy, good evening.
No matter what dumb story you're trying to sell us. If you suggest that, if you apply common sense, you're evil. And then they go farther and say things that are like completely implausible. Seth Moulton, we're quoting, "The last thing we want is to raise gas prices in Europe." Really, Seth Moulton? Is that true? Because isn't the Biden administration philosophically opposed to low gas prices? Aren't they opposed to all fossil fuels? Oh, right, they are. How do we know that? Is that Russian propaganda? No, because we can't read Russian propaganda because it's been banned in favor of our propaganda. We know that because Joe Biden himself has said so many times on television. Okay, so maybe there is a motive here. Maybe there's more than one motive. But don't ask, because, warn the media, asking obvious questions is forbidden. Watch.
Fox News host Tucker Carlson irresponsibly claiming the United States was responsible for the leak.
Other than Putin and Tucker Carlson, it seems pretty clear that everyone knows that Putin did this himself.
And Tucker Carlson, this past week, actually once again directly repeated Russian propaganda, suggesting it was somehow the United States behind.
Dumbfounded at the moment, Phoebe.
Pipeline. How real is that movement? Is it growing?
It's Russian propaganda! How dare they? Really? Is it really? Probably, just thought experiment here, a lot of Americans who don't feel any allegiance whatsoever to Russia don't like Putin. Why would you if you're an American? But care a lot about their own country and the behavior of their own government. So if their own government, again, the one they pay for, the one they supposedly control, is doing things contrary to their interests and then lying about it, maybe they think they have a right to know and ask obvious questions like, are you lying? And if you're not lying, speak slowly and tell us how your story, the one you're expecting us to believe, makes sense. It's possible that asking questions is a patriotic duty of Americans. Shut up! That helps Putin. You're not allowed to say it. You're not allowed to quote the President of the United States promising to eliminate the Nord Stream pipelines.
Who's not allowed? You did it.
Celebrating that sabotage. You're required to believe that Putin took out his own infrastructure. You must.
You did it. I played it.
Into Putin's playbook. Of course, as you would expect, Susan, Russia says, oh, we had nothing to do with this. We're going to launch an investigation. But come on.
The indications are that foul play was involved and that it appears that, Russia is certainly the likeliest suspect of this.
I think this is clearly an act of sabotage of some sort, and Russia is certainly the most likely suspect. I think this might be just the first salvo of some additional things that might be coming toward Europe.
What Putin is saying to us by blowing up his pipeline is, look, I can blow up a pipeline. If need be, I can blow up the internet cables coming into your country. I can blow up functioning pipelines. I can do all sorts of stuff.
Oh, it's Bill Browder. He's an expert on the subject. Believe Bill Browder.
Ooh, it's Tucker Carlson. He's an expert on the subject.
After it was very clear that the war in Iraq was not helping the United States in any way, and in fact hurting the core interests of the United States, that the media engaged in a rare nanosecond of self-reflection. How did we get here? What role did we, for example, the New York Times, play in convincing the public that Saddam had WMD when he didn't? And for that one moment, you thought, wow, maybe they're learning something. Maybe they won't do it again. But it turns out the opposite happened. Now they're just completely doubling down on what's very obviously a lie and attacking anyone who asks to hear it explained rationally. And it's not just the media.
Who's attacking you?
DC think tanks, whose purpose is long in doubt. Like, what's the point of a DC think tank? Oh, to run interference for the ruling class.
Man, fuck the Brookings Institute.
The Praetorian Guard. The Brookings Institution filled that role for many years. They just produced this analysis, quote, U.S. podcasters spread Kremlin narratives on Nord Stream sabotage. What's interesting about this analysis is that nowhere in it does the august Brookings Institution rebut the evidence that the U.S. or a proxy of the Biden administration had something to do with this. There's, in fact, no evidence either way. Instead, they just attack anybody who asks questions. Quote, the theories pushed by these podcast hosts align with Kremlin messaging. Oh, align with Kremlin messaging. They used to be called guilt by association. Vladimir Putin likes dogs. What, you like dogs? What are you, a Russian sympathizer?
You call anyone who even stands up for LGBTQ plus issues a groomer, you piece of shit.
Right, okay. It aligns with Russian propaganda. So the point is, it doesn't matter whether or not it's true. It aligns with Kremlin messaging. Therefore, you must be censored. But not everybody got the memo. There are, tucked away in the deep recesses of American
You're the
society,
number one cable host. How are you censored?
I don't know, in St. Bart's for the last 3 years and didn't realize that you can no longer exercise free speech.
Not high enough for this shit.
One of them's a professor at Columbia called Jeffrey Sachs. So he went on Bloomberg the other day and was asked about the Nord Stream pipelines, and he decided to respond rationally. And he said, well, actually, there's quite a bit of evidence that the Biden administration was involved. But rather than follow up, the anchor, realizing that forbidden topics were being
What's the evidence? I'd love to hear it.
just shut down the segment.
I mean, just the history of the CIA just does funky shit.
The destruction of the Nord Stream pipeline, which I would bet was a U.S. action, perhaps U.S. and Poland. This is
All right, Jeff, we got to stop there. That's quite a statement as well. Why do you feel that was a U.S. action? What evidence do you have of that?
Well, first,
good follow-up.
Radar evidence that U.S. Helicopters, military helicopters that are normally based in Gdansk, were circling over this area. We also had the threats from the United States earlier in this year that one way or another we are going to end Nord Stream. You're not allowed to say these things in the West, but the fact of the matter is, all over the world, when I talk to people, they think the U.S. did it. Just to tell you, and by the way, even reporters on our papers that are involved tell me privately, yeah, well, of course, but it doesn't show up in our media.
Okay, first of all, he said it. He said it on Bloomberg. He said all of that. Very astute analysis. They allowed him to explain why he thought that was the case. So I don't understand. First of all, Tucker edited it. We didn't see the full thing. News hits are only ever like a minute or two, interviews like that. It's infuriating, but Americans have short attention spans, other than people that watch, Twitch streamers for hours on end. So I don't understand what the issue is. That clip was nothing like what Tucker described to us when he was setting it up.
It doesn't show up in our media.
The anchor's clearly getting instruction from the Chrome. Stop him! Stop him! What evidence do you have? Well, there's radar evidence. What? Be quiet! Shut up! Just cut him off! Never invite him back.
They didn't.
Oh
my God! Oh my God! Tucker has the audacity to say that. A few years ago, there was a guy, here we go. Okay, that's the Fox News version of it. I want Rutger Bregman's version of what happened. So this Dutch academic went to the World Economic Forum or some meeting like that. Yeah, it was World Economic Forum. No, Davos. And like seriously tore him a new asshole. And then Tucker invites him on. So remember what Tucker just said here.
Shut up! Just cut him off! Never invite him back! Stop!
What he just accused Bloomberg of doing, he absolutely did to Rutger Bregman.
And you're all like, oh, I'm against the globalist elite, blah, blah, blah. It's not very convincing, to be honest.
Why don't you go f*** yourself, you tiny brain, and I hope this gets picked up, because you're a moron. I tried to give you a hearing, but you were too annoying for me.
You can't handle the criticism, can you?
Boom! Dutch historian Rutger Bregman.
We gotta be talking about taxes. That's it. Taxes, taxes, taxes. All the rest is bullshit, in my opinion.
I mean, it feels like I'm at a firefighters conference, and no one's allowed to speak about water. That's one of the great moments, maybe the great moment in Davos history. Rutger Bregman is the author of Utopia for Realists, and he joins us now.
So that is Tucker introducing him. We're seeing his feed.
And part of it makes me wonder, are you the first person ever to note that people are flying private to talk about global warming and that none of them mention tax avoidance? Has anyone ever said that before at Davos that you know of?
Oh, I'm not sure. I'm not an expert on Davos history, but it is a bit hypocritical, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And others have noted that. We've noted it on this show. We've just never gone to Davos and said it out loud as you did.
Hypocritical. Mm-hmm.
What response did you get?
I mean, they were not very happy with me, but I'm just I think, a random Dutch historian who's basically saying what everyone around the globe is thinking. You know, the vast majority of Americans, for years and years now, according to the polls, including Fox News viewers and including Republicans, are in favor of higher taxes on the rich. You know, higher inheritance taxes, higher top marginal tax rates, higher wealth taxes. It's all really mainstream. But no one's saying that at Davos, just as no one's saying it on Fox News, right? And I think the explanation for that is quite simple, is that most of the people in Davos, but also here on this channel, have been bought by the billionaire class. You know, you're not meant to say these things. So I just went there and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to say it, just as I'm saying it right here on this channel.
Well, what was interesting, I thought, about what you said was you noted something. I mean, many people have called for higher taxes, but very few.
Well, not on this channel, is it? I mean, almost all of the pundits on this channel for years have been against higher taxes, right?
Absolutely.
The vast majority of Americans is in favor of it.
I mean, I don't know. It would be interesting to know how many hours of Fox you've watched, but I'm interested in what you said about tax avoidance. So
yeah, I'm interested in question avoidance.
Faces a specific tax rate does not mean that person pays that tax rate at all. I don't think Netflix, for example, paid any taxes last year at all. So what would you do specifically to make certain that this class of people pays what they're supposed to pay?
Well, it's about multiple things. So we should really crack down on tax paradises and on tax avoidance. That's a major issue. But it's also about having higher taxes. So in the 1950s, for example, in the 1960s, in the golden age of capitalism, as historians called it, we had top marginal tax rate for the very rich of about, 70, 80, 90% actually under Eisenhower. President. And this was also, one of the best periods in American history. Same is true for the UK and the rest of Europe. So as a historian, for me, it's all not, it's really not rocket science. We should just go back to simple and straightforward solutions from the past.
Right, but this country was sustained, and since you're a historian, I guess you would know this, sustained by an industrial economy at the time that was broad and deep, that created a middle class. That doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, because you guys offshored it.
Different economy. I wish it did exist.
Oh well, but that's not really an issue. I mean,
Work the same way with an entirely different economy?
well, I think it would. I mean, America is still pretty much the most powerful country in the world, right? So if it really would want to, it could easily crack down on tax paradises. But the thing is, I mean, you guys have brought into power a president that doesn't even want to show its own tax returns. I mean, who knows how many billions he has hidden in the Cayman Islands or in Bermuda. So I think the issue really is one of corruption and of people being bribed and of not being, not talking about the real issues. What the family, what the Murdochs basically want you to do is to scapegoat immigrants instead of talking about tax avoidance. So I'm glad you're now finally raising the issue, but that's what's been happening for the past couple of years.
Uh-huh. And I'm taking orders from the Murdochs, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
No, I mean, it doesn't work that directly. But I mean, you've been part of the Cato Institute, right? You've been a senior fellow there for years. You've been taking their dirty money. They're funded by cock billionaires,
Wait, why don't you tell me how it does work?
Well, it works by you taking their dirty money. It's as easy as that. I mean, you are a millionaire funded by billionaires. That's what you are. And I'm glad you now finally jumped the bandwagon, of people like Bernie Sanders and AOC. But you're not part of the solution, Mr. Carlson. You're part of the problem, actually.
AOC, but can I just say, and
it's true, right? It's true, right? That all the anchors on Fox, they're all millionaires. How is this possible? Well, it's very easy. You're just not talking about certain things.
Fox doesn't even play where you are.
It doesn't play where you are. Well, have you heard of the internet? I can watch things whatever I want, I have, actually. I can't say I'm a great fan of your show, but I do my homework. So, I mean, you're probably not going to air this, but I went to Davos to speak truth to power, and I'm doing exactly the same thing right now. You might not like it, but you're a millionaire funded by billionaires, and that's the reason why you're not talking about these issues.
But I am talking about these issues.
Yeah, only now. Come on, you jumped the bandwagon. You're all like, oh, I'm against the globalist elite, blah, blah, blah. It's not very convincing, to be honest.
Why don't you go yourself, you tiny brain, and I hope this gets picked up. Because you're a moron. I tried to give you a hearing, but you were too annoying for me.
You can't handle the criticism, can you?
There's a war.
No, he cannot. So that was 3 years ago. It was like right before the pandemic. And this is what he said last night.
Be quiet! Shut up! Just cut him off! Never invite him back! Stop! The only explanation allowed, of course, is the one the government wants you to believe. Vladimir Putin is so...
Flaming hypocrite. And I love that Rutger Bregman. Love that dude. He likes to kick authority in the balls.
He's kicking authority in the balls.
We like that sort of thing around here.